So when I got my lathe, I got a bunch of other stuff with it, and a lot of it is I believe is for a larger turret lathe, and I'm not familiar with any of that stuff. But what I think this is a outside turner. You know, it holds a bit in there, either at a 90 or at an angle, and you could turn the outside of something with a turret lathe. This is an 1.25" shank. And what I thought I would do with this would be turn it into a flat cutter. It's almost practically is a flat cutter. It would be a reverse rotation, but all my lathe tooling is left-handed anyways, so that works for that. If I was to turn this down, initially what I was thinking, since only having a 3-jaw chuck, is I would shim it with a piece of aluminum to get it to run where I want. 120 thousandths off of, it would be 120 thousandths off of center in this direction. So that was what my initial plan was, and then I decided to watch Mr. Pete's shop tips, I believe number 160 for eccentric turning, and I didn't realize it, but there's actually a formula for that. And my 120 thousandths of aluminum would have put me in the wrong spot to have the center of this in line with this face here. So what I opted to do was model it up and 3D print an eccentric driver dog with, this would be a dog to prevent it from turning in there. And I could chuck this up in the 3-jaw and that'll run how I want it to run. And I also did the opposite side with a center hole that I can use a center on and make sure that this is rigid and not going to slide out of here. So this piece was printed in 99% infill, and I wanted it as solid as possible. When I pressed it in there, it was made a little bit of cracking sounds, but I think it's pretty good, pretty solid in there. This was printed in 80% infill, and I just did it on 80, so it was a little bit less plastic used. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and try it. Something I thought about is I should have made this smaller, but I wanted to make sure that this piece was captive and you really had that secure. I don't know if you can differentiate that, but I think I'm going to try to get it to run a little more true, because that's got a taper in it, so it's much deeper depth of cut down here and pretty narrow there. Funny thing about it is so this is more perpendicular, and this is more at an angle, so it's out of true. I know that this had a taper in it. It wasn't a perfectly cylindrical piece, but I don't know if that just really shows the exaggeration that much or what, but pretty goofy. I'm just gonna keep going with it. Okay, well there it is. Eccentric turning using 3D printed bushing or whatever you want to call it. Stuff that I learned is, so if you're going to use a center in the tailstock, I think just putting that center hole in there with your tailstock is probably a better choice than 3D printing it in the end piece itself. Then you know you got it on center after you get everything all aligned and everything. I briefly threw this in the mill, but I think I didn't take enough time. I didn't take enough time to make sure that I was running true before I started turning it down. You could see when the interrupted cut was cut, and it was, one side was perfectly straight and then the other side had an angle to it, meaning that it was cutting untrue. So I think this process would work really well if you were doing short little parts and stuff like that. You could do a split piece, so it clamps around it, and then with it being split, the tighter you tighten the chuck, the harder it would hold this, and you don't have to have this dog system. I was doing some fairly deep cuts, and the only thing that I ended up doing was slipping the belt on the lathe, not any issue with the 3D printed part itself. And I am still running the 3D printed half nuts in the lathe as well, so I would call this a success, but it's got its limitations. So I did end up finishing this off with a hacksaw and then just filed it smooth and put some Scotch-Brite on it. So I'm pretty happy with the process, and not having a 4-jaw chuck, this allows me to do more stuff that I couldn't do before. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.